Welcome back, everyone. Now that you're experts at rotary cutting, we're going to move on to a second skill, and that is sewing a scant 1/4 inch seam. Before we do that, though, if you are really beginners, you first need to be able to sew a straight line, guiding your fabric. So find a stripe fabric, sew along one of the lines on the stripe, draw lines on a piece of fabric, and sew along the line so you're comfortable sewing in a straight line. Once you're at that point, then let's arrange your machine so that you can sew the scant 1/4 inch seam. If you have a computerized machine, you probably just have to punch a couple buttons over here. But if you don't, like this one, your book suggests several ways on page 38 and 39 for you to sew that seam. Most throat plates are marked here in 1/4 inch seams. So the 1/4 inch one is right next to the feed dogs. The only problem with that is that when you put a piece of fabric in here, you cover up that line. So you can see that I've put a piece of tape out here, and I use that tape to guide the fabric along the feed dogs. Now this is actually a 1/4 inch foot on this machine, so it has a bar right here that determines the 1/4 inch. So however you determine and arrange this, the next step is to practice. And we'll take one of these strips that we cut with our rotary cutter. When I learned to sew quilting skills, I was taught to start on a scrap of fabric so that any problems happened on that fabric and not on my good sewing project. So we're going to do that. So I take a few stitches and then move my fabric into place, guiding it here with the tape. And some people are speed demons and some people are not. And it's tricky. You really have to practice. And that got caught, but it isn't a real problem here. Okay, there's your seam. I've sewn it with dark blue thread so we can see it better. And let's look at measuring it. If I put my 1/4 inch, then I have to come just inside my sewing line. So that's not bad. And again, it's the consistency that you're looking for here. And that takes practice, no question. That takes practice. All right, whenever we sew a seam, the next thing we do is to press it. So I'm going over here to the ironing board, and pressing, remember, means up and down. This actually settles your threads into the fabric, and that is the very first thing you do. Now we're going to open this up and press the seam in one direction, and your pattern will tell you which direction. And what I'm doing now is called finger pressing. So I'm getting the pressing part established. I'm starting it. And then you're going to use your iron to make that a nice, crisp edge. Okay, so the next step, you're going to follow the instructions on page 40 and 41, and my pieces are a little larger so that you can see them. And you're going to sew 3 pieces together, pressing, and then pressing to one side. These are 3 2-inch pieces. So each seam removes a 1/2 inch, total of 6 inches minus 1. This should measure 5 inches across. We put the ruler down over here at this edge, and we come up pretty close to 5 inches at the other edge. You also want to measure the middle part. Now, if I've taken a 2-inch and removed a 1/4 inch and a 1/4 inch, then this ought to measure 1.5 inches. You see the mark right there? So that's the kind of accuracy you really need to have with your scant 1/4 inch seam. Here's a block I've been working on. You can see we have some of those bias strips. And so take a look at the back at the 1/4 inch seams. This instructed us to press them open. Normally you press them to one side. So this is your second skill, sewing a 1/4 inch seam. We'll stop again for questions and then have our last segment.